Hi everyone, this is Marina with How I Got Here. And again, we're continuing the segment of Rich Davis's life that that he's gone through. And thank you so much for sharing it. We have Russell here finally. We missed you yesterday.
Back. I miss
Um,
you. I know you're in good hands. Everybody is
yeah.
always, that's the whole key. And Rich is the man. So amazing.
Yeah. Again, Rich, thank you so much for sharing your story. Um, Yesterday you left off on the part where you actually got arrested
Mhm.
and got beaten up by a police officer while in the precinct. And then I believe they arrested you and they took you to the Rikers Island.
Well, there's a process when you get arrested in New York City. There's you go through, you, ordinarily, a guy had gotten arrested in Astoria, Queens. And ordinarily, if you got arrested in that precinct, the police from that precinct would take you to the 114th precinct. They would process you from there. And then you would lay up in that police station until they took you to what was called central booking, which was the 112th precinct in Forest Hills, Queens. But this was a special task force that I got arrested by. And they had jurisdiction all throughout New York City. They could go anywhere and arrest anybody. If they got a tip that something was going down in Jackson Heights, Queens, and they were in Brooklyn, they went. And this task force was they were under the New York State Rockefeller laws. That's what they were designed for, to reinforce these laws, which were the most stringent, rigid, ridiculous laws in the country. Anyway, I had gotten arrested. They took me right to 112th precinct. They bypassed going to the 114th precinct. And that's where they discovered that I had hid a $20 bill. I'm just recapping what we went over last night. And they got violent with me for a few minutes. They beat the crap out of me. In fact, when I had come back to my cell, there was a guy in the holding cell. There was a few guys there. And one guy said to me, man, you hear that guy screaming down the hall? I said, yeah, that fucking guy was me. He just beat the shit out of me. Um, yeah, there's a lot of humor behind bars, believe it or not. Once you've accepted where you are and why you're there. But
Mm.
anyway, what they did is they also take you from central booking in the morning. They'll get a paddy wagon or a van or a bus, and they take you around to all the adjoining precincts in the borough. And when they made probably about 6 or 7 stops at various precincts to pick up other men and women who were arrested. And then they bring you to Queen's House of Detention, where now they're going into day court. And it's a horrible process, horrible process. Anybody who's been arrested numerous times in Queens or Brooklyn, I've been arrested in uh, Queens and Manhattan, and it's a nightmare. You just want it. You wish you could just make it to court. All the stops, different precincts, prisoners being loaded on the bus, then you're being loaded off. It's horrible. It's a nightmare. But they took me to the courthouse, Queens Criminal Courthouse that morning, which was May 20th, and they set $10,000 bail on my head. And I was sent off to Rikers Island because nobody was making 10,000 bail for me for sure. Um, I was, this is pretty important because it's another thing that I had to come to grips with when I finally did get into my recovery. Because of the issues that I had, with the kids on the bus and the kids in Zariga. I was a bit of a racist. I didn't like blacks. Um, and it wasn't this conscious thing. It was more subconscious. It was more resentment and anger because of my dealings with them, my being bullied by them and attacked by them. Um, so it wasn't something that I wore. I held the flag up about that I'm a racist. It wasn't that type of racism. It was a very deeply embedded resentment and anger at them, vengeful. So when I got into Queen's house that morning, and I was laying up in a holding pen with maybe 10 or 15 other inmates going to Rikers Island. One guy got real nasty and testy with me for no reason. And I knew to shut my mouth because I had been arrested many times before, in between Spofford and Zariga and now being 19. But I knew to shut my mouth up. I wasn't a troublemaker. I wasn't that type of guy. I wasn't a tough guy. I shut my mouth. I ate humble pie. I hated being where I was. But this one black guy just decided he was going to pick on me randomly, and back then, for some reason, they didn't take. I had this necklace. It was fake gold, but it was a crucifix. And he came over and he tried to grab it, and I instinctively pushed him away. And it wasn't about race at that time yet. But he came back at me and pushed me, and we had a fight in the cell. And the CO came in, they broke it up, and neither one of us said anything pertaining to it. They just broke it up, and they told us, chill down, blah, blah, blah. So we got on the bus to Rikers Island, and I was handcuffed to a real big black guy, but an older guy, and very quiet. And we were seated in an area of the bus where they had it caged off. We were behind a cage, but in front of that cage, there was another cage. That area was for women, but there were no women there. And they sat me and this other gentleman on the right side of those two seats there, and on the left side there were two seats. And behind the gate was this guy handcuffed to somebody else that I had to fight with. And all of a sudden, talk about PTSD, this guy started spitting at me through the gate, the divider. And I went off big time. And the first thing I started doing was calling him out of his name. I was calling him, was using the N-word. I freaked out. I had never gotten violent like that in public. My mom saw me pull temper tantrums, but that was something new to me. And the guy that I was handcuffed to said, "Hey man, you gotta calm down, brother," he said, because you're going over to Rikers Island and it's a whole different world over there, man. You can't be talking like that. I said, simmer down. And the hacks, the CO, they quieted us down in the bus. And when I went over into Rikers Island, they put me into isolation because I was heroin addicted. They put me into a ward where they gave you methadone. And when I got there, this guy told me, "Motherfucker, when you come out into population, we're going to open you up. We're going to get you, blah, 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 blah." So now I'm going into I had never been over to Rikers Island. And Rikers Island, if you know anything about it, hands down was probably the most violent, notorious jail. It's not a prison. It's a city jail. But it's horrible, the conditions there at that time. This was in 1974. So I sat up in what was called C-74. It was for adolescents, and they fed me methadone for a week. And the first day that they let me out, I went into what's called population, and I go to this dorm. Well, actually, it was a quad. It wasn't a dorm. And who's there but this kid that I had the beef with on the bus, and he had a whole crew there. And when you're in a jail population like Rikers Island, you know, it was pretty much the same atmosphere as was the bus when I was going to Spofford as a kid. And this is not coming from a racist place, it's coming from a place of reality. You know, most most of the black population in jail, which especially at that time was probably 70%, 80%, they're not depressed there. They're not oppressed there. This is like a second home to a lot of them. And it's, again, not a judgment, but these guys know how to adapt better than a guy like me would know how to adapt. So this is not a knock against them, you know. They were much more adaptable. They pretty much were the population, the vast majority. They were much more secure than a kid like me would be, you know. And that comfort level of theirs was very intimidating for me. So I spent that whole week projecting going into population and getting my fucking ass killed, stabbed to death or whatever. And that's what was happening in a place like Rikers Island at the time. So I came out into population and the stuff started, the racial tension started immediately. And that night, nobody was bailing me out. My family wanted nothing to do with me. I laid up in the methadone part of the C-76 quad, and I couldn't rely on any friends. And that afternoon, I was able to see a priest, and I went to that priest very humble, very humble. I was terrified. I cried. I'm facing now. I know what my sentence is going to be. I knew I was facing 6 to life in prison. I had talked to my lawyer, so I knew the reality of my life had shifted in one night, and the next week was horrendous. So all of this fear was overwhelming me, and I spoke to this priest, and the priest was very compassionate and warm and loving, and he told me the same thing that pretty much any father would have told a son, you know, just stay out of trouble, don't fight, don't come back at anybody, you're a minority in here, you're young, you're not a big boy, you're not a tough guy, just keep your mouth shut pretty much. And that's what I tried to do. And when I went back to my cell, then they were singular cells. They were called quads. They had 4 legs that went out: a center, north, east, south, west, and everything was electric. Everything was doors opened electronically, closed electronically, and I had a confrontation with that kid on the bus when I had come back after speaking with the priest. And it wasn't a physical confrontation, it was just verbal, primarily from him threatening to get me that night. He said, "We're going to get you tonight." And what they had in Rikers Island at that time was the night corrections officer. They would assign certain inmates to what was called the house gang. And the house gang would go around at a certain time at night, 2 or 3 of them, and they would look in cells to make sure that nobody committed suicide or anybody was doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And I went to bed that night and I was terrified, terrified. And again, we had discussed this yesterday. Every dark moment in my life, somehow or another, was interrupted by grace, by life. And I remember that night wanting to hang myself up, wanting to kill myself. I was 19 years old, and I had thoughts of not wanting to be alive at 12 and 13 years old, but I never came so close to considering doing it as I wanted to do it that night in myself. And I could have hung myself up. Wouldn't have been easy, but I could have hung myself up. And I literally, at one point, lights were out, but the lights never go out completely in a jailhouse. They're always on lightly. Today, I could never fall asleep with that amount of light.
Right.
And I started praying. I started praying deeply. I started crying. I was really reaching out
Mm-hmm.
and begging for some sort of help. And I swear to you, after a couple of hours of that, my cell door opened. And it's a freaky fucking experience because it's not like I heard somebody walking down to my cell with keys jangling and jingling. My door just slid open. And I said, wow, I'm going to get raped and murdered by this house guy. All right. But I didn't hear any footsteps or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was just terrified. I watched for a few seconds. And when you're in a predicament like that, time is forever.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it's about 12 o'clock at night. All of a sudden, I hear over the PA system, Rich Davis, get your stuff. You're going home.
Wow.
I said, whoa, I'm going home. It was 12 o'clock at night. And I looked out and I looked down and I said, I'm going home. The guys went into the microphone again. You heard me, you're going home. Get your stuff. I'm up front. My brother, Jim, bailed me out. They had lowered my bail to $5,000, 500 cash. And my brother Jim had bailed me out. That night. Yeah. So again, I dodged a bullet. I don't know what would have happened that night if those guys would have come in and gotten me. But, I've been blessed enough to not stick around for what seemed could have been deadly consequences many times in my life. That's how miracles happen. So, I'm going to move on quickly at this segment because what happened is my brother took me to Samaritan House, which was a therapeutic community for drug addicts. It was something that I was going to need in order for me to help my case. But the heroin addiction was too overpowering. I couldn't stay in that place. I needed to be out in the street. They shaved my head. They humiliated me, told me I was a bum, I was this, blah, 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 blah. But I needed to be on the streets and I needed to get heroin into my system. And so I went about probably 7, 8 or 9 days maybe without shooting heroin. But then I left this place, Samaritan House, where my brother dropped me off. And that was the condition of bailing me out. And I just split that place. And I went back to the neighborhood. And a week later, I got indicted to the grand jury. I was now in the Supreme Court of New York. Now it was the real deal. And I had to go back for arraignment. I thought they were going to put new bail on me because that's what they do usually if you get indicted. And they didn't put new bail on me, but I was still shooting heroin. And now I had even become addicted even more than I was before because I had panic going on in me. I'm running the streets. I'm stealing all over the place. I'm doing burglaries. I'm doing some real harsh, illegal shit. And, you know, it's getting dangerous. I mean, I was held up in places. I had nose to nose with police through windows. I had police shooting shots at me, leaving the scenes of crimes. Um, it was getting really, really dangerous and crazy. Um, I had a girlfriend at the time who uh, she was sort of like, you know, like, we were like Bonnie and Clyde, except she wasn't a criminal. And I had gotten her pretty close to being addicted to heroin. She was shooting heroin. I was shooting heroin into her veins. And her family hated me. And she begged me so long to try to get clean. And I couldn't get clean. And she wound up joining me. Fortunately, she had a moment of clarity and left my ass and went off to New Jersey, then back to Florida with her family. And she would beg me to come down to Florida when she got there. Please come down, get out of New York. And I was getting closer now to my second and third appearances at a special courthouse in Long Island City for drug dealers specifically. Nothing else in this courthouse was tried there, only drug cases.
Mhm.
And I was going for a pre-sentencing type thing. And I said to my lawyer, legal aid lawyer, I said to him, I said, listen, man, you know, we have to bargain this down somewhere or another. What's going to happen? They're going to, you know, give me probation? He said, no. He says, you're going away. He says, and you're not getting out of it. And I thought he was fucking crazy.
Hmm.
I thought, you know, everybody, you know, I couldn't go into service, by the way, because I had hepatitis. I had contracted hepatitis at 17. And I actually went down to the draft board. I went down to the United States Army and I tried to enlist.
Mhm.
But having hepatitis qualified me as 4F. They wouldn't take me. It's a autoimmune disease, hepatitis, and they wouldn't take me. So the only out that I thought I had uh, was that. And my legal aid told me, "You're going to jail, Rich. I hate to tell you that. They're making examples out of people like you, your crime. They don't care why you did it, how you did it, what your circumstances were. You're going away." I said, "Well, what do you think I should do?" I swear to God, and from God's mouth to to his mouth to my ears. In hindsight, I see that this was grace. But he told me flat out, you need to jump bail and get out if you don't want to go to jail for a long time. And I was facing 6 to life mandatory. I was going to do 6 years at least. I wouldn't have lasted 6 days. And I, for the next month and a half, I shot as much heroin as I possibly could. I don't think I slept for that whole month. And if I did sleep, I was half awake, filled with anxiety and fear. Couldn't get enough heroin into my system, you know, to drown out the reality of a 19-year-old kid going to jail. Couldn't talk to nobody. My brother wouldn't talk to me because he took me to the program. I split. He actually came and ran me down the streets and took me back. And then I split again. Nobody could control me. My mom was begging me, you know, to get help and stop. And she was dealing with her own addiction now as well. My family was dispersed terribly. It was just chaos, total dysfunction. You know, I often say this, and I'm going to say this in a stereotypical way. If you were to read my story, especially with my last name being Davis, the average person, you know, more so out of New York, would think, oh, it's just another black kid from the inner city. that's the type of lifestyle that we live in my family, and I live. That's just the black kid from the inner city, you know. But there's a lot of white kids living that life too, you know. And what had happened ultimately, uh, I got frightened enough where I let my girlfriend in Florida convince me to come to Florida from New York. And what I did is I got 100 milligrams of methadone and I drank it and I boarded a Delta flight. And I remember it because I remember it vividly because back then you could go to the airport and buy airline tickets. And every time I got enough money for an airline ticket, I put it in my arm. Couldn't get to the airport quick enough. We didn't have cell phones back then. You went to the airport and you bought a ticket. And so many days I woke up, I was going to get that ticket, and I'd scheme up enough money to get the ticket, and then I'd go and I'd shoot heroin with the money. But I finally did it once, and I got on a Delta Airlines flight. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I had never been out of the state of New York. Never. I had never gone, you know, well, I'd been to Jersey or Connecticut, but I had never been on a vacation. Never. Never did anything productive or creative up until I came into recovery. But I got on that flight, and I remember also something very, you know, quite vividly. It was like 7:30 in the morning, and the airline stewardess, that's what we called them back then, asked if I wanted something to drink, and
Mm.
I told her I wanted a gin and tonic. I was terrified, and I didn't drink all that much. And she said, "No, sir, we're not serving alcohol." I said, "Oh fuck!" I said, I don't know, give me a fucking Coca-Cola or something. My diet back then, my diet was Coca-Cola, Marlboro cigarettes, peanut chews, and Breyer's vanilla ice cream. That's what I ate. That was my diet. Once in a while, I have a McDonald's hamburgers or something, you know, quick food, you know, convenient food. But junkies don't eat. We don't need to eat. Um, and I remember getting off that flight in Tampa, Florida. And I remember the heat coming off. I never felt anything like that before in my life. I was used to transitioning into spring and summer, you know,
Mm.
from colder months here, you know, and I wasn't used to sun and heat like that. But I remember my girlfriend, she was so happy to see me. She put her arms around me, she cried. Well, she loved me. She used to tell me, "You're such a good young man. You're a
The
good."
first girlfriend or the second girlfriend?
My second girlfriend. Yeah, my
Uh,
first girlfriend was out in Long Island, so
oh, Long Island, right,
I
right,
had
okay.
met while I was using heroin.
Mhm.
But she was so happy and so proud of me that I got out of the neighborhood, you know. And people were starting to overdose and die. My friend Stevie Chinshaw had just died of an overdose. Um, so it was uh, it was a whole new world for me opening up. And you'll appreciate this. Um, as soon as I got down there, I knew I started feeling sick, you know, after a couple of days not having heroin, and my body went through withdrawal. But more than anything, the culture shock, the warm weather, uh, you know, the not knowing anyone, not having family. I hadn't had the family anyway in years, but just it was totally foreign to me. And I had this cloud over my head with my case. And
Mm.
I knew that they wouldn't have warrants me for about another month or so because I didn't have a court date right away. But I immediately started drinking when I got there, you know, and being the addict that I was. And, you know, addicts, I often say this in my writing, addicts, they have sometimes better adrenaline rushes trying to get their fix than the actual fix, you know. Um, and I was addicted to the lifestyle as well. I was addicted to being up all night and stealing, breaking into cars, breaking into stores.
Right, right, right.
Uh, that became that became my lifestyle. I was a meat thief. I used to steal hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of meat and go into bars and sell it. You know, I'd sell a $60 or $70, leg of lamb, that weighed, 15 pounds, for 10 or $15, and ribeye steaks, filet mignons, and in our crowd we had meat names for I was Richie Ribs. Yeah, it was comical, but crazy and dangerous. But I made a lot of money. I supported my heroin habit on stealing meat for quite a long time. There's a lot of money in meat thievery. They called us
Wow.
cattle rustlers. Yeah.
Mm,
So this geographic that I made to Florida, what had happened is I started drinking now. I started drinking around the clock. I drank every day I was. And what happened now is alcohol brought out the anger and the vengeance I had, towards everybody. I was angry. And I never knew how badly angry I was until I started drinking, every day. And I got a job in Florida. Uh, I got a couple of jobs. I got a job with my girlfriend's mother. She had a moving company, a very, very big, successful one. As a matter of fact, the show Let's Make a Deal at that time was on television with Monty Hall. Very, very popular show. And one of the first jobs that I did working for this girl's mom was I transported furniture from that show to a recipient of the furniture and uh, and what do you call it? Forget what area of Florida, but I wound up going back to that beach with my girlfriend. Uh, it was on the West Coast, Florida, and and I got drunk and I got thrown off the beach. But my behavior now is everyday drinking, and I was abandoning my girlfriend. I was going out to various bars that I uh, met guys on another job that I had, and I was getting violent. I was getting into fights. I was getting violent with my girlfriend because my girlfriend wanted to put not restrictions so much, but she wanted me to be a partner and be at home and
right, right, right. Of
bring up
course.
the paycheck in. I couldn't do that. I didn't have that in me. The addict in me was run amok, and uh, I wasn't about that. I couldn't face reality. I had too many fears going on, too much trauma, and I was getting more violent by the day. And I had gotten a job. I had looked in the paper and I found a job picking oranges for Tropicana orange juice, literally out in
Hmm.
groves picking oranges. And there's a technique to picking oranges. I never learned it. Uh, I remember my first day going to this job. It was predominantly black.
Hmm.
Uh, I used to go to their plant in Bradenton, Florida. And it was sort of like almost what would be the equivalent of a shape up here in New York. There would be a bunch of guys, in front of the office at Tropicana, and they had like a crew leader um, who would pick out certain men to go to the groves and pick oranges for the day.
Right.
This guy picked me my first morning, and I got in the back of the truck with him and 7 or 8 other guys. and he's talking to me. He had what we call in the heroin world the swollen hand blues. You could tell this. Nobody in that truck came from
Heroin world.
education or a place of, yeah, it was all men of deprivation and men who have been in trouble. And this guy was definitely an ex-heroin addict. His hands were
Oh,
swelled
wow.
up permanently. But he was so humble and beautiful. And he tried to, you ever pick oranges before, son? I said, I picked the fucking orange of my life, pal. I said, I don't even eat them, and he showed me this technique, how to manipulate my fingers and grab it and pull it down the right way, bop, 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 you know. And he warned me, he says, and the thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to push and shove or kick the branch of the tree. He says,
Mm,
you can't do that because nothing's going to happen. Well,
mm.
I wound up pushing the branches, kicking the tree. I couldn't get a bushel of oranges for the life of me. And he gave me a few days where he let me work with them. These guys were bringing in 6, 7 crates a day. I think in the 2 days I was there, I brought a crate in. That was the difference between them. But it was really a really a fantastic experience for me looking back. Being out on the orange groves of Tropicana in Bradenton, Florida, and the guy was a real sweetheart. But I was a candle in the wind. I went wherever the wind took me. Wherever I could get a drink or a drug now, that's where I went. And I was stealing everything. I was going into stores again in Florida, stealing food. I had a I had guys chasing me in a public store one day, man. They caught me stealing a tube of toothpaste. And man, did I wreak havoc on that store. Luckily, I didn't get arrested. But I had sat in cop cars in Florida, and they didn't pick up my warrants, and I was fighting with people, and my girlfriend's mother finally decided that they weren't going to help us anymore, and they thought it was best that I got out of Florida, and the daughter came with me, and I came back to New York. And I came back to New York, and I'll get right into it in 1975. And for the next 2 years, I drank and shot heroin, with warrants for my arrest now in New York.
And where did you stay during those 2 years?
I was, my girlfriend and she wound up leaving me again, and I wound up going out to Eastern Long Island with my sister Barbara, who I had gone out with earlier. And that's where I reunited with my first girlfriend.
Oh,
I'm not mentioning their names in
right.
this podcast, but I wound up getting back with her again, in spite of my drinking. I wasn't shooting heroin on a daily basis. I was shooting heroin maybe once every 2, 3 weeks. I would leave Long Island and go into Queens and get high. I had my warrants full blown now. And I was working with my brother-in-law who had gotten into the same industry that I had gotten into as a kid. But I was making like $150 a week, believe it or not. They would give me $35 a day because I wasn't productive. I was like a burden to them, if anything. But I lived in his house, and I was dating this girl now, and I was going out getting drunk with her, and we were having fights. She was a drinker like me. One night I had a fight with her brother,
Oh my God.
uh, and I hit her brother, and her brother wound up having brain surgery.
Are you serious?
Yeah, for blood clots on his brain a week later. Yeah. Um, I can't mention any names for anything in particular, but um, yeah, that's where I was going. I was heading to just more violence, and I was very violent. And I was very fortunate that I didn't get arrested, and it was only because of her not having me arrested, the family not having me arrested, that I was able to escape that. And again, simultaneously, I have these warrants for my arrest. I now have an A felony and a D felony warrant for Richard Davis by the state of New York. And in 1976, Saturday Night Fever came out. And it was a weird year for me because I was just beginning to get a little bit of an idea of my life is going nowhere. I'm 22 years old. And that movie, I identified a lot with that movie, you know, coming from where I came from. Most of my friends were Italian in Astoria. And I loved to dance. We hung out in clubs in the very early 70s, 70, 71, 72. And I loved to dance. I danced at my house, my sisters, my brothers, we all danced. And my friends and I, my Italian friends and I in Queens, we weren't violent. We weren't fighters necessarily. We enjoyed being out. We enjoyed having fun, and you know. And I had worked and made a living as we discussed last night. So I had some normalcy for a couple of years that I began to miss. You know, now at 22 in 1976, I knew something was way off. You know, but I couldn't stop the behavior. I needed to drink. I needed to drink. And if I wasn't drinking, I was thinking about shooting heroin. And in fact, one night during that year, I got so desperate that I actually stole the guy that I worked for. I stole his truck out in Selden, Long Island, and I drove into Queens. And that night, I overdosed. And my friend Anthony saved my life. Gave me what's called a salt shot. And I explained last night, I woke up in a bathtub of freezing cold water,
Right.
shivering. And I was getting careless now. I was getting, I really didn't want to live. And I didn't think that so much consciously, but my behavior was indicative of that. You know, I was reckless. I was dangerous.
Careless, reckless, right?
And everybody knew it. Nobody wanted to hang out with me. The guys that I would see out in Long Island, when I would go to various clubs out there with my girlfriend, they wanted nothing to do with me. They didn't want to drink with me. I always got into fights. I'd get into fights with them. I'd have a couple of drinks, man, and my attitude turned around. I got delusional. You know, I attacked anyone. I was not a
Wow.
happy drunk. I was a violent, miserable fuck when I drank, and I was predictably unpredictable.
Right, right.
So I remember I remember feeling like I was breaking down, and I my girlfriend wanted me to stop drinking. She tried to make me control my drinking. I went from everything from, you know, just drinking beer, just drinking wine. We tried drinking sophisticated drinks like martinis and, you know, all this stuff that seemed like what social drinkers did. And
Right.
no matter what I did, how I drank, I wound up fucking drunk and violent. And you know, she finally gave me the boot, told me to, you know, I got to leave. And I had went to live with my brother-in-law's partner, and when I stole his truck to go in, and I overdosed, just very shortly after he threw me out of his apartment. So now I had nowhere to live. So I called up my sister who lived in Queens, and her husband was in the same industry. My whole family was in that industry. And he said, "Yeah, come into Queens. I'll give you a job." Blah, 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 blah,
Hmm.
blah. And I rented a little room in Kew Gardens, Queens. It was, yeah, I guess it's Kew Gardens, Forest Hills, borderline. I was paying $25 a week, a little room near Forest Park.
Wow.
And I came in, my girlfriend didn't want anything to do with me out there anymore. In fact, I had gone out right after I got that room. I had sort of conned her into meeting me again. I took the train out and we went to this place and I drank at least 2 bottles of wine and got real drunk and got thrown out of the place. I don't even remember how I got back home that night. I went through a blackout. But I was blacking out now in my drinking and not remembering what I was doing.
That's
Uh,
funny.
only wake, only waking up to be told,
What happened?
some
Right.
horrible stories too. Uh, and I was losing control. My brother-in-law gave me a job. My sister Kathy, who loves me still today, we're joined at the hip. We've always been, loved me back then. Her younger brother, she'd do anything for me. I was, my brother-in-law was allowing me to take the truck once in a while. But I would take the truck and not show up to work for 3, 4 days. And, I didn't have a phone. We didn't have cell phones back then. And I'd be gallivanting, all over Queens and Harlem, and uh, doing whatever I wanted to do. And then I'd show back up to work like it was just last night that he gave me the truck. I blew engines on his truck. I was I was insane. And and it got to the point where nobody wanted to tolerate me no anymore. Anymore. And what had happened was he had fired me. And now I'm in this room and I got nothing going on. And no money. I I have a habit. I got warrants for my arrest. And I'm pretty sure this is the way it happened. But I went to a phone booth and I called my ex-girlfriend uh, from the island. And it was the weekend of my birthday. It was July 6th, 1977. And my cousins, who owned a bar in Woodside called Finnegan's Rainbow, which
Hmm.
anybody over 50 in Queens knows of, they had an annual 4th of July party in Forest Park. And I had somehow or another convinced my ex-girlfriend to pick me up that next morning. And I only lived a mile away from where the party was being thrown down in the park off Woodhaven Boulevard. And she came in and got me.
Hmm.
And I remember getting in her car late that morning, about 11, 12 o'clock, and we drove to the park. And we got out, and there was beer, booze all over. Everybody there that I knew were into drugs, cocaine, heroin, barbiturates, everything. The whole neighborhood was there of Woodside. My older brother's generation, and all I remember from that morning was me and a couple of guys. One of them is dead now, died of AIDS. The other one, is a retired Vietnam vet who I love. His name was Ralph, good friend of the family, beautiful friend of mine later in years. Um, we were we were singing Led Zeppelin songs, uh, and I was mimicking playing the harmonica. And I remember my girlfriend like being mad at me, and I was being nasty to her. She eventually left me in Forest Park, and that was July 4th, 1977. And all I remember for the next 14 days or 13 days is two incidences. I remember trying to buy heroin with this girl, Marsha, who's
Mhm.
no longer here. She died from addiction as well. I remember being with her in Queens Village trying to cop heroin. And I remember being at her mother's house in Woodside trying to steal money. And all I remember were those two things. And I remember waking up on August 17th, 1977, in my little rented room. And I didn't read newspapers back then. I never read a book until I came into recovery. I was not a reader. Uh,
Mhm.
I could read the newspaper, but I wasn't interested in too many current events at that time.
Mhm.
But I remember waking up in this rented room and seeing newspapers on my floor. And mind you now, uh, I'm sorry, this was July. I woke up August 17th, not July 17th. August 17th was 6 weeks later. And I woke up and on my floor, the headlines in the newspapers read, "The King is dead." Elvis died on August
Mhm.
16th, 1977. And various, headlines about him. And there were headlines about John McEnroe beating Bjorn Borg. And I saw there must have been about 10, 12 papers strewn about on my floor. I had no fucking idea how they got there. I think I might have been like reliving my father's patterns. My father used to come home with a beer and the newspaper every night.
Mhm.
And one of the one of the newspapers talked about the blackout of 1970, the summer of 1977. I was blacked out during that blackout. I don't remember
Oh, wow.
it was the summer of Sam as well. Uh, but it was something that just woke me up out of this fog that I was in for 23 years. Uh, and simultaneous to me waking up, the landlord, it's probably why I woke up, the landlord was banging on the door, screaming for his rent. He
Oh
was
my God.
German with a very heavy German accent. I went to my bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I couldn't even recognize myself. I didn't know who the hell I was. And lo and behold, I had I had a Bohack bag. I don't know if you guys remember Bohacks. Russ might. You don't, I'm sure. Everything I owned fit in that Bohack bag. Really. Um, that landlord threw me out that day. Uh, I took all my belongings, um, and I don't know how, but I wound up at my sister's house. And I started drinking at my sister's house. I remember sitting on her couch talking about Elvis being dead. Uh, and my older brothers and sisters were big Elvis fans. I wasn't a big Elvis fan, but I appreciated his music. And his death really rocked me, though. I knew he died of drugs. And something erupted inside of me. Something collapsed with his death. And that day, that was August 17th, that my sister must have gotten pissed off at me somehow or another. For some reason, I left. And I know this sounds crazy, but this is the life of an addict alcoholic. That day, I don't remember how, but I wound up back in my old neighborhood. And the next thing I know, as I woke up on August 27th, 1977, that was about 10 or 11 days or so after Elvis's death and being evicted from my apartment, my room. And that day, I remember my friend Robbie, when I woke up, who's dead now, he was yelling at me and he threw me out of his apartment in Astoria. I don't remember ever going to Astoria. I don't remember how I got there. I don't remember anything I did in all those days. I don't even know how I managed not getting picked up for my warrants being in the neighborhood.
I was gonna ask what happened with the warrants.
Yes, I didn't get in trouble with the police, thank God. back then it was a little bit different than it is today. They don't have the accessibility they
Right.
did back then as they do then. But these are, again, these are things that I can't explain. I lost those days. I don't know how I went about. Addicts, alcoholics, they're on automatic pilot. They live on instinctual, guidance at times, and that's what happened with me back then. But what happened, which is most important, is I remember being in a phone booth on Hoyt Avenue in 31st Street, and this is vivid. This is a vivid memory. This is as clear as I'm looking at you guys here. Um, I made a phone call. I put a dime in the phone, and I called my sister Kathy's house where my mom was staying. My mom had been evicted from her apartment. She was living with my sister. My mom was in and out of hospitals dealing
Right.
with her own stuff now at this time. It's 1977. Um, and again, like I said before, with the Saturday Night Fever, that was an awakening for me. That was that, I remember John Travolta going in to find Stephanie on the train. What he was doing was he was going in to find himself. John Travolta was looking for himself in that movie. That's what I felt. And I started, you know, I started looking for myself around that time. I had no idea which fucking way to go though. I had nobody reaching out, giving me ideas or options to deal with my life.
Mm.
I couldn't stay in one place to do so, you know. And thank God the good Lord knew that jail wasn't the place for this kid to be. Um, so I get in the phone booth on the corner of Hoyt Avenue and 31st Street, right where you come off the Triborough Bridge. I went on coming from the Bronx side, the first exit in Queens. And I remember calling my sister's house. Now, I didn't know that I was going to get my mom on the phone, but my mom answered. And it was the first time ever that I had a conversation with my mom where she was my mom and I wasn't parenting her.
Oh, wow.
I said to her, I said, Mom, I said, I'm in trouble or something. She said, where are you, Richard? Papa, papa, you left here, last week, whatever, and we haven't heard from you. What are you doing? And I broke down. I don't know what I'm doing, Ma. I broke down. And
Yeah.
she started talking to me real softly. Richard, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. She said, you can't do
Mm.
this anymore. You can't live like this anymore. You're too young. You're going to kill yourself. You're in trouble. You got problems. She says, get in the cab and come out here. I said, Ma, I don't have no fucking money to get in no cab. Get in the cab. Back then, you could get in the yellow cab. They were everywhere. And
Right.
she
Right.
says, get in the cab. I'll pay for the cab when you get here. Just get here. And this was August 27th. It was the night of August 27th. And I hailed the cab. I don't remember the ride out to my sister's house. I don't remember anything except when I got there, her feeding me and cleaning me up a little bit.
Mm.
I had my Bohack bag.
Mhm.
I didn't have a toothbrush. I didn't have a hairbrush. I didn't have deodorant. Um, this is how I was dressed. Russ will appreciate this. I had a pair of high-heel marshmallow shoes,
Mm.
black polyester bell bottom with a green iridescent shirt. The collar was down to my nipples. I looked like John Travolta strung out on crystal meth. That's what I looked like. Skinny, tall, my face broken out, my hair long, and disheveled, beat up. And my mom just cleaned me up, fed me, and she put me in my nephew KJ's bed, who, as we speak now, is dying of cirrhosis of the liver at age 53. So I wake up that next morning to my sister Kathy standing over the bed. And she said, Richard, you have to get up and you have to leave our house. Kenny and I had taken the kids fishing. All her children were young. She had 3 boys. And we don't trust you in the house. You
Mm.
can't stay here. And I was still half in a fog. I didn't believe what I was saying. I did latch on to something that was quite an awakening in and of itself. Was when she said she was going fishing, I thought, that seems like such a normal thing
Joe.
to do. That seems like such a family, beautiful thing to do. I was experiencing envy.
Right.
I was jealous. Like, wow. And when I was younger, I used to go fishing with my sister Kathy and Kenny before they got married and all. So she said, you got to get up and you got to go. And man, she wasn't kidding. And I got up. It was a Sunday morning, August 28th, 1977. And I got up and I didn't know where I was going to go. I had a quarter and a dime in my pocket. And I had those clothes on that I just described to you. And I got up and I don't remember washing my face. And if I brushed my teeth, it was one of our children's toothbrushes. And I remember walking out to the living room and my mom being there. And my mom was doused in shame, just horribly saddened by what was going to happen over the next few minutes in front of her. The 6th of her 8th child was going to walk past her in such disgrace. I'm
Right.
facing life in prison. I'm a junkie. I'm an alcoholic. I'm homeless. I look like death. Death. I have no destination. I have no destination. I have nothing. And I'll say this with a little bit of humor and a little bit of God's grace, that sometimes it's the best place to start.
Yeah.
Having nothing.
Right.
And I'll tell you what happened this morning, and then we could stop a while. Maybe you want to ask some questions about it. What happened that morning was the beginning of healing for many people, not just me. But I remember vividly walking out of the door, and I remember my nephews being in the living room looking. They were young. They were young, 7, 9, 11, you know, around that age.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember them sort of corralling each other, watching Uncle Rich leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
There was a silence. There was a horrible, deafening silence. And my mom greeted me at the door as I was walking out. And my sister had a door that opened in and a storm door that opened out. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember this vividly. It played such a great part in me hitting a bottom. And my mom hugged me, and we both cried, she more than I. And I remember walking down the 2 steps, and my sister, she lived in Windsor Park, out in Bayside. And I remember walking, and I got about maybe 50 or 60 feet from the house, and I didn't hear the storm door slam or close. And I knew I'd visualized my mom leaning on the door, watching me walk out, wondering where the hell is my son going to go? And something compelled me to turn around. I fought it. I was too ashamed. I fought turning around. But something compelled me, sort of like when I had that awakening on the Grand Central Parkway going back to the Welfare Hotel.
Right.
Those voices said to turn around. And I turned around in my clothing and my horrible look and my shame. And I had eye-to-eye contact with my mom.
Mm.
And nothing was said, just some feelings going back and forth.
Mhm.
And we both felt each other's despair and pain.
Right.
I turned around and walked with tears in my eyes, didn't turn around again, and I walked to Springfield Boulevard. My sister was about 100 yards off Springfield Boulevard. And I started walking south on Springfield Boulevard. It was before 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow.
And I started walking up. It was a sort of an incline walking up towards Union Turnpike. I didn't know where the fuck I was going to go. I, I walked towards Union Turnpike. And as I got to Union Turnpike, maybe a block or so before that, I started singing the B side of the Abbey Road album by the Beatles. And it was my favorite album.
Mhm.
And I started singing the Golden Slumber medley. And
Mhm.
on the back of on the tail end of that medley, um, Paul McCartney lyrics uh, go like this: "Oh, that magic feeling, nowhere to go. Oh, that magic feeling, nowhere to go, nowhere to go." And the harmonies are beautiful. And I started singing that. I don't know if I was humoring myself or I was getting, I choose to today to say I was getting messages, you know. But
Yeah.
I went to Springfield Boulevard and there was a little luncheonette there that my sister had waited tables for a number of years. And he was open. And I went in, he knew me, and knew, he knew a condition I was in. And the guy gave me eggs, he gave me coffee, he gave me, I think I had a soda too, and he gave me a pack of Marlboro cigarettes.
Wow.
Yeah. And didn't charge me a penny.
Mm.
And out of nowhere, I walked out of that restaurant, that little diner, that little coffee shop, and I walked to the nearest phone booth, which was only about 20 yards away next to the
Mhm.
corner, off the
Right.
corner. And what had happened in that magical half hour, 40 minutes between singing that song, going into that little diner and eating and him treating me like I was his son. I thought about my brother John, that he had gone to this place called, I can't say it because I need to protect the anonymity of my program, but
Right.
I called the 12-step program. And I had never made a phone call like that before. I didn't know the number. Back then, they had the yellow pages in telephone booths. I got it from the yellow pages.
Right.
Uh, and I made the phone call. And I have a woman who I call my Mother Mary answer the phone. And I started crying a little bit, saying, my brother went to this place. I'm wondering if maybe I could get the same help, whatever. And she called me son. She said,
Mm.
"Son, are you safe? Are you okay? Have you drank today?" I said, "No, I didn't drink today, ma'am. I didn't do any of that." I said, "I think I'm safe." I said, "I'm standing on a corner." I said, "I don't know. I don't know what else to do with my life." I said, "I ain't got nowhere to go."
Right.
And she said, "I'm going to have two men there for you, and probably within an hour. You just stay where you are." I said, "Holy shit."
Mm.
Lo and behold, very shortly thereafter, two men pulled up in a car. I don't remember what kind of car it was. And they said, "Hey, young man, get in." And I got in and
Mm.
they took me to the Belrose Diner on Jericho Turnpike in Belrose. Their name was Pete and Hank, two
Mhm.
wonderful men. And I watched these guys go back and forth at the diner. They told me Their mantra to me was eat, kid, eat. I was 23 years old. I was about 130 pounds.
Mm,
Eat, kid, eat. And I was able to smoke back then. I had cigarettes,
mm-hmm.
smoking in the diner, eating. I'm listening to these two guys, and never, ever, ever had I paid attention to two men speak since Joe Tezzerieri and the Monsignor at St. Margaret's.
Mm-hmm.
And these two guys spoke to me and they started talking to me about not drinking anymore. You could do it, kid. You know, you're in a lot of trouble. Of course, I told them my whole life in about an hour.
Oh my God.
And they just embraced me,
Mm.
told me I was going to be all right one day at a time. Don't worry about it. We're going to take you to a meeting. I said, what the fuck is this? A meeting? What kind of meeting you going to take me to? I'm wondering maybe they're undercover. They're going to bring me in, turn me in for my warrants. I had a lot of things going on in my head, but never,
Yeah.
ever could I have expected to be put where these guys put me. And I'm going to tell you this story because it's incredibly a miraculous story. After the diner, they spent about 2 hours at the diner with me, and they made me eat. They probably put 2 pounds on me eating, and they made me feel like a kid in a candy store. It was so warm and so fatherly, and they said, "Listen, we're going to take you to a meeting now
Mm.
at North Shore Hospital. It's an afternoon meeting. You're going to meet some good people there. You know, you're going to sit down. You're going to just relax. Maybe have some more coffee. They're going to have goodies there." And they took me and they dropped me off at North Shore Hospital. It was a 1 o'clock meeting. And there was about maybe 80 to 100 people in this meeting. And bantering, going back and forth, chattering to one another, laughter, it was like it's like I was brought to heaven. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. All of them, not most of them, all of them were older than me. I was the youngest person in the room. And the first thing that made me feel safe was the person that was chairing the meeting. Her name was Dorothy, which is my sister's name. And then when the meeting finally got into the groove, and they went into their ways in which to conduct meetings. They had a chairperson, and then they had a person speak and tell their story. And I identified with the speaker tremendously. And I have to let my dog out for a moment. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Hold that thought.
Amazing.
I know, it's crazy how the whole life he was just thrown from one corner to the next.
I'm wondering how he feels about collecting all of these things,
Yeah, no. Go ahead.
So this is where the miracles start having faces. After the meeting, and by the way, it was the first time ever, I stood up at the meeting. I raised my hand. I stood up, and I said, "My name is Rich, and I think I'm an alcoholic." I said, "I know I'm an addict, but I think I'm an alcoholic." I was definitely an alcoholic, and that was like, wow. Just saying that like lifted so much shame off of me. And unbeknownst to me, that admission allowed me to have an explanation to some extent, the little bit of education that I had into who I was. But somehow or another that, wow, I fit into this place after hearing this person's story. So after the meeting, this guy, Marty R., love him, he just died recently. He says, "Hey, man, my name is Marty. I want you to meet somebody." And he takes me over to the coffee table. And he says, "Rich, this is Jim D."
Mm-hmm.
another thing. At that time, my oldest brother, Jim, and my father was Jim.
Right.
And he introduced me to another Jim. And he says to Jim D, he says, "Hey, Jim, do you have room for another sponsee?"
Mhm.
I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know what a sponsee meant. I didn't know any of this lingo. And Jim says, "No, no, no." He says, "No, no, I'm overwhelmed." I knew that that was some kind of rejection that I just experienced. I didn't know what, but my street savvy, told me something just went down, Rich, that wasn't in your favor, you know. But about 20 seconds later, he says, "All right, okay."
Mm.
And the next thing he says to me is, "Would you like to go to the diner?"
Oh, wow.
Let me let the dog in. This will take about 10 more minutes to tell the rest of the story. Come on. All right, ready?
That I have.
If you think you've heard miracles so far, wait till you hear this. This guy is 12 years my senior. His name is Jim D, right? As my father and my brother. He's an Irishman. He takes me to the diner. My suspicious mind, because I'm used to hustling men, my suspicious mind is, this guy's probably a fag. He's going to try to get stupid with me, But the alcoholic dope fiend on the right shoulder was saying, if he does it, I'm going to take his car, take his money, and I'll go get high. This is the addict's mind thinking. But over here, the desperate kid who's dying to be saved is saying, that's not going to fly today. That's not what this is about. I knew it intuitively, but when you're shedding addiction, there's a lot of layers. So he says to me, get what you want. I said, I don't have any money. He said, don't worry about it. You get what you want. So I think I ordered poached eggs or something, He ordered a Reuben sandwich. I remember what he ordered. I never even heard of a Reuben sandwich, right? So we're going back and forth, and he's talking program talk to me. He's talking about, the disease, you have a disease, and, you're going to have to make amends. You're going to have to, take certain steps, do certain things, stay away from the neighborhood. You're going to have to, tap into your character defects, see what you need to change. This is all foreign to me, I've never had depth in conversation like this guy was going. I had no idea. But after we finished eating and the check was about to come, he says, "Listen, now I got my little Bohack bag now." He says, "Listen, I'm going to a barbecue out in Hicksville, Long Island. Would you like to come?" I didn't say this, but I said, "I ain't got nowhere else to fucking go. I'll come." I said, "Of course." He says, "And by the way," he says, "I think you'll like the guys that you're going to meet out there because they talk a lot like you." Now, I didn't know exactly what he meant, but I had an idea, And one of the first things that attracted me to this guy was his vocabulary and how eloquently he spoke. So articulate, absolutely amazed me. That I would be so taken by it and attracted to it was a miracle in and of itself. So he gets me in his car. He had a 71 Ford LTD, and he had an 8-track tape in it. I'm going back now, Ross, right? And he had Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh, wow.
8-track. And I believe it was the Gratitude album, which is my favorite Earth, Wind, and Fire album. And he puts it in. And Russ, you know me. I don't give a fuck if I'm dying. I'm singing. I'm going to sing. And I'm singing along to the song, getting comfortable with this guy. And I'm smoking in the car. He was a smoker, was a chain smoker. And one of the funny things about this guy was in him talking to me about now recovery. It was all about him conveying this message of recovery. He's got to very sick young man. He was sober and clean for a number of years. He knew that he had a sick kid on his hands. And he devoted every bit of his energy and time to me for that whole day. But we were on the expressway and he was talking to me so much. He had 2 and 3 cigarettes burning at the same time. He was talking to me so much. He was going so slow. Cars were passing him, beeping him, giving him the finger. They were opening their windows saying, "Fuck you." He was doing like 25 miles an hour on the expressway. And here I'm laughing at the guy, and I'm listening to this guy save my life simultaneously. It's comical. You know, when God shows up, man, he gives you the whole deal, you know?
Right.
So he's taken me to this place, this barbecue. And mind you, now I'm in those dirty clothes. I don't remember when the last time I took a shower was. I don't remember. My mom didn't shower me that night. I think she just cleaned me down with washcloths. So I don't remember having anything clean on me. And we're going to this place in Hicksville, and we get to the destination. And I'm shame-based like big time. My teeth, Marina, now were totally decayed because of the heroin use, the drinking. I hadn't been to a dentist in I don't even know how many years. But my teeth were decayed. My face was broken out terribly. My hair was real long, but it was really, strangly. It looked like spaghetti, And I felt like a moral leper. So I told him, I said, "Jim," I said, "I'm really nervous about, I'm going to cry thinking about it." I said, "I'm really nervous about going in there, man. I haven't been in social situations in a long time, And he grabbed me, told me, he said, "Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. They understand. They understand." We walk up the driveway, and I let him walk in front of me. I wasn't leading the way. I swear to you. It's the God's honest truth. We get about maybe 5 or 6 feet up that driveway. He's here, and I'm like over here. I'm reluctant to go in, and all of a sudden, the door opens, and out comes a woman, and I hear, "Richie Davis. My God, we've been saving a seat for you for a long time."
Wow.
You know who it was, Marina? It was the house of Billy Sullivan, who I met at my father's wake, who gave me a job and taught me my trade, and his wife, Linda, my brother's wife's sister.
Oh,
I had lived with them when I first started working with Billy because I was homeless a little bit here and there. They had clothes of mine in the house
Oh my God.
that they had left over when I stayed with them a few nights. They welcomed me into their house. I couldn't believe what was taking place. She embraced me at the top, and she knows me since I'm 6 and 7 years old. Her sister is married to my brother Jimmy. My nieces, Chrissy and Lauren, and my nephew James are their children.
you made a full circle, basically.
God made it. Me, I was the candle in the wind, man. I was just being blown all over the place. That day, and I'll end it with this. That day I met 7 men. All of them stayed sober. One of them, actually, they all stayed sober except Jimmy, who was my sponsor. He went out and drank, but wound up, when he passed, he was sober. But my best friend today, whose children are my children's first cousins, my other friend, Jim Gamble, I met him there that day, and we've been inseparable since then. I remember asking him in for his phone number, and we had such a close bond immediately. I said, could I get your phone number, man? Because that night after the barbecue, Jim and I went back to Queens and he gave this other Jim a lift. I said, can I get your phone number, man? He said, yeah. I said, what is it? He says, it's 516, 2 times 4 is 8, and half of 90 is 45. That's what he said to me. I said, what? He said, yeah, it's 516, 2 times 4 is 8, and half of 90 is 45. I said, okay, 516-248-9045. And I've known that number now for 48 years. So that was the start now of me entering into the world of recovery. That meeting, that way in which God took me off the streets, man, and put me in a place where you couldn't write a script that unbelievable. You couldn't. You know. So
That is unbelievable. It's a beautiful thing that you can tell the story right now.
mhm.
And we actually heard something beautiful at the
Mhm.
end of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. My whole life. There's not, I'm telling you, if I can convey anything to anybody in this, it's it's probably not it's probably not the process of recovery, but it's the grace of God setting it up unbeknownst to the addict. You know, we have a saying in program, don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle, you know.
Oh, wow.
I like that, but I like to take it a step further that you're already in the miracle. It already happened. All you have to do is get in touch with that intuitive self, you know, that part of you where God dwells. God don't come from without, he comes from within.
Right.
You know, I heard today said at a meeting, are you living from within or are you living from without? What had happened was John Travolta and Saturday Night Fever made me start looking within. And that, in essence, was the beginning of me wanting something different. And believe me, I'm nothing special. I don't have anything that any other 23-year-old kid has, you know, suffering the same things that I suffered. I was just awakened by it. I was awakened and I tapped into that. That arrest
Exactly.
in 1974.
I know. I was gonna say the fact that you ended up in jail and you were like literally was like, if I stay here, I'm gonna die. I
Mhm.
think that was a drop of the beginning of your
Mhm.
actual transformation. And then everything else was like, okay, you went to your sister or your girlfriend. It was, I guess, you know,
Every one of them played an intricate part. They were all
right.
part of a design. That getting arrested in 1974, all those guys that I contracted hepatitis from using sharing on needles, all of those guys, the vast majority of them stayed in the neighborhood. They wound up dying from AIDS, overdoses, cirrhosis of the liver, Hep C. If I didn't take that arrest, we wouldn't be here talking.
But everyone else that you knew at some point had gotten arrested too, no?
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like it was something internal with you. And
Every
I don't even know at what I know at what point because I understand I hear the story, but I
Mhm.
feel like it was something about you as a person that you always had that connection with God. It's just that you were so thrown to the wolves and sharks at such a young age. You didn't have time to think and stop and just be like, what's happening? You just had to like fend for yourself
Okay, I'm going to
every
tell you a
second.
story. I'm going to tell you a story where it all began. This is the God's honest truth. I don't tell the story too often. What you need to know about this story is it doesn't matter if it happened or not.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter because I don't know if it happened or not. I was 4 or 5 years old 4 or 5. Just sort of after my father came home, shortly after my father came home from jail. I was on the boardwalk of Coney Island, where we spent a lot of time as a kid. My brothers and sisters were down there. I had family members that worked in Coney Island on the rides. My father was a waiter when he worked at various restaurants down there. It was common for my mom to be down there getting some money if my father was working, to bring some food to the house. My mom had to chase my father down for money, whether it be in a bar or at some restaurant that he worked at. And I'm on the boardwalk at this age. It's God's honest truth. And a man comes along and picks me up and sits me on the rail of the railing, on the top of the railing. And he kisses me on the forehead. God's honest truth. And he says, I will take care of you forever. Don't ever, ever worry. You're going to be fine. I promise. Never, ever did I ever forget that. I didn't remember it until many years later. It took me years later. He says, I'll protect you. I'll take care of you forever. Don't ever worry. I'll never forsake
Right.
you.
That was your guardian angel that came to you.
Right?
Wow.
And that's what I try to do now. That's where, everywhere I go, my compassion and my generosity goes before me. I look for the less fortunate. I look for the needy, and I look for ways in which to give of myself because of it all the time.
Do you think that this is your true calling, or had it been different? Had your father been different, do you think your life would have been, going into a different route?
I think this is what I was supposed to be. I think this is where God, my sponsor, Jim D, you know what he told me from the beginning? He told me, he says, Richard, first of all, I've never heard a story like yours. He says, and I've never seen anybody recover the way you've recovered and the way you still recover when you get yourself into trouble. He says, God has special plans for you. Everybody, every spiritual man, every mentor I've had in my life has always told me that my story is special, that I'm here for reasons. I really shouldn't be alive. Shouldn't be alive.
Or you should have never been walking out free outside. You should have been in jail.
Huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure.
I'm gonna change your podcast name to the name of your book to also True Calling.
You can
That's
name
what it
whatever you
is.
want. You can name it whatever you want. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've walked in the shadow of the valley of death many a times.
Right. Literally.
And even in recovery, putting myself into situations, and I've always been protected. I've always, and believe me, I'm a fuck up.
No.
Really, I mean, I've screwed up, and I wanted to be a millionaire before I was 36. God made me a millionaire long before that, but I just blew money. I was never good with money. I can't hold on to money. I don't even worry about money anymore. I just know, and I spend more than I have. I just say, take care of it. Don't worry about it. I got this. I really don't fear too much.
Right.
And I've employed probably 300 or 400 men in the years that I'm sober. Put food and dinner on lots of tables. Because of channeling the industry that Billy Sullivan brought me into and taught me to trade. I've taught many a men that trade, and I just passed it on. That's all. Just pass it on what Billy gave to me. Billy was one of my greatest mentors. I love and miss him dearly. But everything I have somehow or another deserves to go back to somebody else. I don't own any of it.
Yeah, you're different for sure.
I'm
Very different.
fortunate, very fortunate.
Yeah.
That's why I meet guys like Russ and women like
Russell.
you.
Russell he's a different breed, man.
My
He's,
boy, my man.
yeah, yeah.
I like when did you ever see where Billy Crystal eulogized Muhammad Ali? Yeah. Muhammad Ali called Billy Crystal, "You're my little brother. You're my little brother, Billy."
Hmm.
And sometimes I think of Russ like that. Not so that much my little brother, but my brother, my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. And listening to your story and the details, I think that's really the irony in a lot of this is you have crossed paths somehow. Like I feel like people that I knew, and maybe they have come in path with you somehow, and you're reminding me of a lot of things in my life as well, because I have had some really close mentors, role models, people that I loved, that I cared about.
Mm,
And one person in particular that you remind me of is a friend of mine who was the caterer at Universal Studios many years ago. And I met him when he was on top of the world. He had just gotten remarried. He met a girl. They were inseparable. They both sang like they were like, like that song, "I've had the time of my life." That was their song. And I met them
Jennifer
karaoke.
Lawrence and Bill Medley. Mm,
Right. So the guy was a good looking guy. The girl was beautiful. And he was on top of the world. And they got married. I met them both. I met them out in California. They came back and they were originally from New York. And when I came back to New York, I kept in touch with both of them and something started to slip.
mm,
Um, they went to tons of parties and she started to let me know that your friend has an alcohol problem.
mm,
Hmm.
I tried to do something. I tried to call him,
mm,
and she's like, he's okay because he'll be fine. He knows so many people, but nobody helped him, and
mm,
she eventually couldn't do anything for him, and she asked him to leave.
mm.
And from what I understand, he became homeless. But homeless in Burbank, California, is different than
And,
homeless in New York.
yeah, right.
The weather, a lot of factors, the being around the certain neighborhoods and things like that. But I had lost touch. He didn't want to reach out to anyone. He just was focusing on the alcohol, and he lost his job. They everything fell apart with him. And I called the police department like every week and asked them, "Is my friend okay?" And they said, "Look, we
Mm,
see him, we keep an eye on him. There's not much we could do.
right.
That's so
If he
sad.
wants help, if he wants help, you know, he knows what to do." And somebody, he'd ask people for money, whatever. And what happened was the way I know the rest of this story was 5 years later, I'm doing a show at this Chinese restaurant where I have met so many people, and everybody knows me from this place, from King Yam, that's closed now. But I was doing my show and I was singing, and he came walking in, all dressed up,
Mm,
in, and he looked really good. And him and I was like, I just stopped, just stunned,
mm,
and I ran and hugged him.
mm,
And he wound up telling me after my show of what the story was. And I kept in touch with him. And he had told me that, yeah, he was homeless and that he would lay down and try to sleep. And the people would come over and just kick him in the face
yeah,
and it shattered his they broke every bone in his body,
Mm.
and he'd have to go to the hospital and get fixed. And then the pain that he had, he would just continue to drink or, take whatever painkillers that they gave him or whatever. And one guy says, he asked one guy, he told me, he asked them, do you have $1? And he said, look, I'll give you $2 if you let me take you to this AA, a counseling center. And finally he said, you know what? I'm going to go.
Yeah. Mhm.
And he said that day
Changed
was
everything.
his beginning. And he went, and he said 6 months from then, he ran the counseling center.
There you go.
And he told me this story, and he said he got his life back together again. And his wife was already gone. She couldn't come back and,
Right.
help him. But he met somebody else, who was supportive of him. And apparently there was a lot of damage that over
Sure.
the years of him being homeless and
Mhm.
him having to take painkillers from all of the abuse and everything that happened to him, that eventually, when he went back to California, and then a few years later, I got a phone call that from his wife that he passed away.
Oh, wow.
And
Mhm. Oh,
it's really can
yeah.
definitely understand. I wanted to go out there, and they said, what are you going to do? Like, physically, what do you do? Like, if you love somebody physically, what
Mhm.
can you do physically? How do you hold the person until, maybe they start punching you at first or
Mhm.
whatever? But what is it that you can do if a person cannot go with you, or if you bring them to your house? Like you said, your family loved you, they brought you in, but as long as you were there with them, they
Mhm.
trusted just enough that you could sleep, but they wouldn't leave you in the house,
Yeah.
I guess. And it's you just wonder, because for me, I'm around the music industry, is so susceptible. Every person, all the
That's
performers,
right.
time you go into a bar, restaurant, whatever it is, it's so accessible,
Yes.
so for me, I've always been like, I tell myself, you know what? I'm indestructible. I'm the designated driver. I'm
Mhm.
never going to be corruptible. I am uncorruptible. No matter
Yeah, you
who it
conscious.
is.
Mhm.
If you fall in love with the most beautiful woman in the world and she said, you have to take this pill, I say, guess what? I
Can't do
guess you're not
it. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
person for me.
Right.
I guess it's not possible. So, I've had a lot of things. I've been in 30 years of me being in the music business, and
Mhm.
I feel like I want to do more. I want to help people. I've always wanted to help people. I
Mhm.
became a music provider for that reason,
Right.
because through music is the universal language. I said, if I ever see,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought to myself, if there's ever a fight in a bar or restaurant, I'm going to throw on Endless Love. How could you fight? There's only you in my life.
That's
And you're
singing.
like, dude, there's no way you could cancel
All
that
we
song.
are saying is give peace a chance.
I was like, I think to myself, wow, the music,
And then everybody's gonna sing at the end of the fight.
That's it. That's it.
And I've had, like, there's so many things you can remember, but I was always able, I never ever had a fight at any of my shows, because I would always know how to engage people in a friendly way, not in a direct,
Mm.
penetrating way where people would feel, hey, you're trying to, deter me. I could see through that. I'm not like that. I'm more embracing. I'm more understanding. Hey,
Mm.
people give me stuff. I'm like, wow, I appreciate that you're offering me this.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
understand.
Sure.
I know how valuable that stuff is, but unfortunately, I just can't do it. I can't do it.
Mhm.
I'm working. I got to focus on my job, but
Yeah.
I really appreciate, you know, you know,
Sure.
it's like, this way they don't humiliate me, like they don't
Mhm.
make fun of me, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes you feel the pressure, you'd say, no, the guy, he's a sissy. He doesn't want to try this, or
Nah, you
you
got to
know.
hold your ground. You got to hold your ground and stick to your
But
principles, man. All right, well, I'm gonna get to bed. I'm exhausted. Uh,
well, you've
our next,
exerted a lot of energy telling us all of this stuff.
what's that?
You've exerted a lot of energy by
Yeah,
getting this all out of your
yeah.
system.
I always this really takes a lot out of me. We'll talk. You know, in the next segment, I'm going to talk about my court case being brought back to court, which at the same time, simultaneously, I met my first wife at Studio 54. You'll love that segment. We'll have a lot of fun with that one. But now we're coming into all the real good stuff, all the
Right.
stuff that all the ways in which God provides for me to enter this new life. And I entered it with a lot of resistance, but not conscious resistance,
Out of fear and not knowing, maybe.
instinctual, learned behavior resistance,
Right.
breaking old patterns,
Right.
destructive patterns, and
Yeah,
weighing things up subconsciously that took years
of
to
course.
recognize what the right thing is. You don't just sober up and clean up in a
No,
day, a year or two. It takes years. I'll just end with this tonight is you had said something before that made me think of this, Russ. Or you might have asked me what I thought I was what my calling was. But I think what God really wants for me, for me, is going to come these next 8 to 10 years of my
definitely.
service and what I do with my life and how I spread the gospel.
Right. I hope everybody literally, like who is in your shoes,
Mm-hmm.
truly understands that no matter how scared they are, no matter how lost they are, or,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there's so much resentment and pain that they
right.
understand that there is a way out. There is,
There is, there is. There's no hope for a better past, but there's hope for a good future. And
right.
if we do this right, or you do this right, and break this down into segments, man,
Mm.
this thing could help
And
countless amounts of people.
yeah,
What makes it that's what makes it a good mantra is that a lot of people that I know, and I'm around a lot of different age groups of people, a
Hmm.
lot of people say that their best times in their life have been are behind them.
Hmm.
And for
Nah,
what, whether they have experienced addiction or not, it is a great thing to give people something to look forward to.
right.
the bottom line is everything behind for me, and this goes back to that within, without. Uh, my joy today comes from the extensions of me, looking at my children, my grandchildren. Uh, that's the grace I look for today. That's where I want to put my energy into. Helping other human beings is what I want to put my energy into, And huh? What,
About
Russ?
dogs.
Uh,
What about dogs?
I love dogs. I'm getting my dog on the. I ordered my all my necessities for my dog. My crate tonight I ordered for my dog. I ordered so many different things that'll be here within the next few days. I'm getting my dog on the 19th or the 20th. I held her yesterday. I saw Georgie yesterday. Yeah. And I love
I
dogs.
can't
I'm a
wait,
big
man.
animal lover. I'm a big animal lover. I'm a big
Me
animal
too.
lover. I love animals. I love all animals.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, brother.
Love you,
Really,
man.
Thank you,
We'll
really.
Rich.
we'll talk
Thank you, Russ.
tomorrow. I'm
Hmm.
going to send that letter out and the script out to Elizabeth Rodriguez. Look her up. I'm
No, I
starting to
know who.
compose her. I'm waiting for a couple of mail, before I want to go to my friend. I'd like to get a couple of decent male actors that want to read it so I could have some names to mention to my potential investor, my friend Michael Ruzak. But
Yes.
you see the little guy here? There you go. And you
He
see,
was been in the video behind you the entire time.
Look, love you guys. I'll talk to you tomorrow, okay?
Thank you.
Yes.
Love you.
Good night. God bless. Later,
Bye.
Gator.
Bye.